cuando entren no se te vayan hasta aquí tan profundo, sino que se me queden como un poquito aquí.
Paco, what aspects of the Gypsy Bride source material drew you in and made you want to direct the adaptations of this trilogy?
Well, when I was a kid, I watched The Silence of the Lambs when I was like 10, which was not a good idea. My parents were not very, were not very aware that I was going to watch this film. And it was a shock for me watching that film. And then I read the books, and it was a thing that I followed through my first like teenage years. And then I saw these things when I read the Gypsy Bride. I saw there was a lot of elements that connected with that movie, with Silence of the Lambs, and with Seven by David Fincher. And I remembered how I loved those movies and how I thought those elements of a very dark story where you are desperately wanted the cops to find the killer, and at the same time you're in this world which is so interesting and so disconnected to what we've seen before, especially with the gypsy world and with the underbelly of Madrid. And in the end, a good noir, a good like cop story, it has to do with the places and the environments. And suddenly I thought, okay, I think I can take these novels and I can turn them into and bring them into my own world. But in the last movie that I did, Adios, Goodbye, in that movie, I found my universe in a way, visually speaking, and I thought, okay, I can combine both of those and bring and make this show as exciting as possible.
Describe what is your universe.
Well, it's hard to describe, but it has to do a lot with flamenco, and it has to do a lot with flamenco music and the south of Spain, because I'm from Seville, I'm from the south of Spain. And there's this thing about flamenco music and about Lorca and about, there's something tragic about the south of Spain and about the way we see life and the way that gypsy people see life. It's all about black and white. It's all about extremes, and everything is very funny or very tragic. There's not like a middle point, So when I read those books, I thought, okay, I think I can bring my vision into that. And in a way, I think when you're telling a story about a family who's lost their daughter, and everything becomes extreme in different ways, I think, because we tend not to think about these matters. We tend not to talk about these matters. When somebody goes through such tragedy, we tend not to look away, And sometimes, like, why don't we make that the focal point and we talk about what happens to a family like that? And I'm also very attracted sometimes to stories where sometimes the cops are the bad guys and sometimes the gypsies are the good guys, because we tend to be like, the cops are always the good guys, and whoever is in that underworld of I'm not saying that obviously that gypsies, all of them in any way have to do with any sort of like underworld of any kind, but sometimes in the show we have this sort of like El Capi, which is this kind of like belongs to this gang. And suddenly it became so interesting for me that they have to try to find a way to revenge the death of the daughter, and they have to find a way to make that happen without the cops noticing that. So how do you navigate those waters? That's very interesting to me.
So talk about the evolution of the series and your own evolution and the vision for La Nena as you are concluding this trilogy.
Well, it's very complicated because it's really funny how the characters have grown so much. And the more they have grown, the more they separate themselves from the original novels. I had some in Twitter, some people have said that I went too far with the La Red Púrpura, the second season of the show. And I'm so proud of it. I think it's although I love La Novia Gitana, the Gypsy Bride, I think La Red Púrpura is even better. I think and I have the same feeling with La Nena now that I'm shooting La Nena. I think it's going to be even better. It's really unique to find a show that actually, normally the shows that we love, sometimes they have a great first season and then they fall apart, And in this one, I hope that it keeps growing and growing and growing, until the final third season. So the funny thing about the third season, and this might be a little controversial, what I'm going to say now, is that we steered away from the novel like a lot. You know, the characters like became something else, and suddenly we're telling a story that is very personal. It's very different from the novel, and it's like the only thing that I can think of is the adaptation of Fargo, the TV show, in comparison to the movie. It's like Fargo, the movie, would be La Nena, the book, and then what we're doing is like it has some things that connect with the novel, but in a very obscure way. And then it became something different and fresh and very violent and very dark, but and very feminist. I'm very, very, very excited about the feminist story that we're telling, because the female characters are going to become even stronger in this last season, and they're going to do unbelievable things, I think.
Would you say that this is all part of your creative process and your desire to have your own creative process imbued in whatever you do? And is that part of the deal whenever you say, okay, I'm going to do this, but I'm only going to do this if I'm allowed to do it my way?
I mean, it's really funny how, because again, I don't want to, you know, in some other adaptations, I think that sometimes the novelist, the writer, has too much power, and I say this with the utmost respect. And I've seen those adaptations. It's like, okay, it's too literal. It's too close to the book. It doesn't have its own soul, its own heart. I think in the end, we're creating this baby, and this baby has to have their own character. And that's one thing for sure. And the other thing's like, there's something that it has to do with your gut and with your feeling, and it's not cerebral. It's something that you feel is going to work, but you don't know how exactly it's going to work. So when I adapted the first book, and then it became the second book, and now with the third book, I thought the story was over. For me, it was like, we did it. It's done, finished. I don't have anything else to tell. And then me and Jose, the writer that I write with, we sat and we said, what would happen if, and we're like, oh, fucking hell, now we got to tell that story. So, so it was really interesting how I never knew, but in my gut, I knew this was going to be very important for me. And it has to become whether the books are like not, I didn't write the books, but it became very, very personal. Probably my most intimate personal work has been this one, because we've been able to take the material and take it somewhere else.
Would you say that your creative process changes on the platform? Because you say, obviously, the author has a lot of power. They're the ones that created the source material. But then when you adapt it, you have to think about, where is this going to be seen or heard, right? So do you change your creative process based on whether it's film, whether it's TV?
Never. No. I mean, to me right now, sometimes, you know, that happens. You watch something that you watch a trailer or something, and you're like, is this a movie? Is this a TV show? You don't know exactly what is it. And sometimes it's like 4 episodes, a miniseries, so it doesn't change. I change things on the day, and that's very interesting to have that power to change, because, you know, Antena 3, they've been very kind, and also the authors, they've been very kind to me, and they were like, we love it, just do your thing, you know. So for instance, I just shot not so long ago, I shot Wednesday season 2, and I'm going to shoot Wednesday season 3, which is great, and I love that. But in a show like that, your creative freedom, it's a little bit more, you have to work within, it's not like oppressed in any way, but you have to, every time you move a piece of the puzzle, 7 different pieces of the puzzle move at the same time. While in here, I can go into any day and say, well, we're not going to do this, we're not going to do that. No, we don't need this. We're going to do this instead, and change my mind. And I don't do that much, but it's very refreshing and freeing to be able to create on the day with the actors. Because I have a whole thing, I don't want to bore you with this, but I have a whole thing about rehearsals, where I rehearse every morning, and then we'll do a rehearsal during lunch, so we don't need much. So we are always creating together. And I love that idea of the family of the Gypsy Bride, the family with the actors and the crew. We're really going to miss each other, I think, when we finish this, because we created a family and we create together, and that's a beautiful feeling.
You mentioned that you do a lot of rehearsing. Is it because you consider yourself a perfectionist and you want to make sure that everything come out just right? Or
no,
to
not
test
exactly.
things out?
No, it's just that I've found, it's a long story, but although I love Stanley Kubrick, I don't think that sometimes Stanley Kubrick was knowing what he was doing by doing 74 takes.
I think that's a myth. That's one of those things that, yeah, he was a genius. It's like, was he? was Malcolm McDowell the other day. I saw Malcolm McDowell the whole in the Clockwork Orange, when the whole thing about Singing in the Rain, he came up with it on the 75th. Malcolm McDowell, the actor, came up with that idea on the 75th take. Maybe he was a genius to a career by doing 74 takes, so he can come up with an idea because it was so desperate, you know. But either way, I think what I love about that process is not that. It's a process that it's looking towards the other people, looking towards the actors and saying, this is what's on paper. Let's make it work now. How we can make it work. And you're not going to know that until you're in the locations with the actors, with the costume, with the makeup on, with everything on. And it's just finding ways to steal time from here and there and create together. And like I said, it's a very creative and fun process when you trust the other one. You know, it's a learning process of trust, you know, because when you start your career and you're just starting directing, you tend to be selfish and you tend to be scared of anybody's ideas. And then as you grow older, you're like, that's a wonderful idea. Let's do that. Let's and because there's a lot of brains and a lot of hearts thinking at the same time. So it's something that I think it makes every time it makes the material better.
What is your biggest takeaway from the experience of having directed Wednesday?
It's very interesting because I had to sort of like get into the mind of Tim Burton, because Tim, I love him, and he has a very well organized mind. If you look at the show, sometimes you watch a show and it's different, because I remember watching the show as an audience and then I had to watch it as a director. And when I watched it as a director, it was like, oh, fuck, this works. It's every shot. It's designed mathematically, like everything is very, very geometrical, you know, and I wasn't aware of it until I watched it, you know, as a director, like I said. So I had to get into that mindset and say, okay, so now every time that Wednesday Addams walks into a room, she's like a shark. She goes, she has an objective, and she wants to get something from somebody. She has this Sherlock Holmes kind of autistic kind of like mind. So it's very interesting how, as a director, I have to change according to that character and according to Tim's mind. And that was very interesting for me, because I had to come back to that and I say this in the most loving way. I think Tim is like a little child, like a teenager in a way. He's so excited about things. He's so excited about what he loves, and his mind works that way. So I had to sort of like go back to my own teenage mind and connect with those things. I know it's hard to explain, but that's what I felt.
Paco, looking back at your journey from early feature films in Spain to directing major international series and films with high-profile actors, what were some of the key steps or decisions that helped you break into Hollywood and be able to work globally?
I think being true to myself, because when I did this movie called Neon Flesh, and at the time it wasn't a big success in Spain, because Mario Casas, the main actor, was very known in Spain at the time, but he was known for doing teenage films, or more like for teenage girls in a way. And then we did this movie Neon Flesh, which was very mature, very dark, very violent, very me. And I was always true to what I had to do with that film. At some moment, I had a conversation with the producer who said, okay, we have to tone it down. We're going to make it more funny. We're going to make it less violent. And I fought very hard to not to do that, to be true to what I imagined. And then the movie made it to Tribeca Film Festival, and I got an agent and a manager there. And even when I got Penny Dreadful, which was my first TV show, I remember talking to Joel Logan. Joel Logan said, I love Neon Flesh. I love your film because it's about family, and it's weird, and it's dark, and it's violent, and it's all that, in a way, Penny Dreadful is. So in the end, while we'll open the door for you, I think it's been, although sometimes people will tell you're wrong, just it's a fine balance, because you have to, on one shoulder, you have like this kind of like dictator, and then you have like the person who wants to listen to other people and wants to, like I said, in my early years, I listen more to the dictator side of it. So I have to be like, yeah, I'm right and you're wrong, and da 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 da. And then you tend to listen to the other guy. But in that moment, I thought I was right, and I felt true to myself, and I did that, and that opened a lot of doors. And then once I started working, I think I'm very, when I'm in a set, whether it's in Spain or if it's in Hollywood, I'm always excited about what I'm doing. And I think actors can tell. And if you're excited about what you do, about your work, it makes a big difference.
How do you navigate working on such diverse projects in both English and Spanish? And how does the cultural context influence your directing style in each language?
It's very interesting because I had the luck to do like Penny Dreadful City of Angels that had a big Latino element, or Wednesday, you know, Jenna Ortega and Luis Guzman and Catherine Zeta-Jones. Like I wish I could tell you things about the last season, but there was some Latino elements that I could be playful with. And to me, although in Spanish, there's also, I mean, I always love Latino culture. My mother used to play me like Victor Jara, which is a musician from Chile. And I love Chabela Vargas. I love Mexican music. So it's been a part of my culture, like since I was a child. And I really appreciate like Latin American music and culture. So every time that I can bring that to the table, it sort of flourishes. In many shows that I've done, like from The Alienist to Penny Dreadful, all of the showrunners were very open to collaboration. You know, they were very, very open to if you come up with an idea that is a visual idea, and then you say you're coming up with that idea because you think it's going to make the show better, you don't go and change things. I'm going to change that scene. No, I'm going to bring something different. What do you think about this? 99% of the times they're super open to it because they know it's coming from the heart and from a place to make things better. I really enjoy bringing my own style and my own sensitivity, you know, which is normally a very, like with flamenco, it's very tragic and very strong sensitivity. I love the color of blood, and I love like to have like a dark palette and then suddenly like a splash of blood. It's like every time now that I'm on set with the Gypsy Bride, I come with, I don't know if you see this, maybe you see this, I don't know if you see this, but that's blood.
Uh-huh.
So
yeah.
that's blood, because I always tend to kind of like put blood on the faces of the actors, and I'm like with, you know, of course, like I'm like a painter.
You're hands-on.
Yeah, hands-on, like Picasso. I'm like, like putting blood all the time on them, and they love it, which is fine.
You're also basically navigating two different life in two different continents. How are you dealing with that? Because you live part of the time in LA, part of the time in Madrid. How do you maintain your creative energy and work ethic with these bi-continent challenges?
On one hand, it's hard because family. It's hard because you have to bring your family with you, and sometimes you can't, and that makes it difficult. But on the other hand, my daughter, who's 16 now, she has perfect English, but better than mine, so that's a plus. But then it's really funny how whether you work in LA or Toronto or Budapest or Madrid or whatever, the crews are very alike. They're very similar to each other. You have this personalities that sort of like repeat. And it's really funny how the focus puller is always like a pain in the ass. Yeah, that's right. I'm just joking, but it's like there's some connections. But honestly, I love going and working on a show is already established, like Umbrella Academy, for instance, because to me, when you make a movie, you're the father or the mother. You're the mother who has to give birth, and you have to feed the baby, and you have to do everything, every little deal. You have to take care of everything. While when they take you to a trip like Umbrella Academy, you're the happy uncle, the funny uncle who goes on the trip with the kids, and you take them to the amusement park, and you have fun with them, and la 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 la. So it's a different beast, and it's very fun to be welcome into this world.
Earlier, you mentioned that that it was you, dark and violent, when you're referring to what you were doing, right? So do you prefer dark genres, thrillers, mystery, that sort of thing? And so how do you decide which projects you want to take on? What elements must be present in the script or in the concept before you commit to it? And any particular genre that you say, this is what defines me, and I really don't want to stray from this?
I think what I love is like, whether it's a movie or a TV show, I love to have the sensation as an audience that when I'm watching, I don't know what's going to happen next. the feeling that I'm not safe, that I'm not this good. This is a horror film. What am I laughing? And wasn't this a comedy? Why is this so violent right now? It's like you're like, woo, what's happening? But I think we got used to things. You know, it's like as audiences, we know too much and we get used to things like too quickly. So to me, Fargo is a good example. The movie is a good example of something that I love, and any genre that starts as something and then it changes and becomes something else. And again, in the end, it's all about the characters and the story. You know, when you read something that is really good and you get involved emotionally in the story, that's what really matters. You know, and it's really hard to find.
You signed a deal with VIS Paramount and this series also is part of it, right? So, what does that deal mean for your career trajectory and your ability to tell Spanish language stories for global platforms?
I mean, to me, it's a thing that I've been trying to do, not only in this deal specifically, but I remember like having meetings in Hollywood about a movie with Bruce Willis, and they wanted to shoot it somewhere in Tijuana. And I was like, yeah, that would be great, but why don't you come to Cadiz? Why don't you come to Spain? Because we have like beautiful beaches, we have like the most amazing food, it's super safe, and we have a tax rebate. And I'm always trying to bring stuff to Spain because I think it has become like a beautiful, like a great market to to shoot, because we have wonderful weather and we have amazing crews. So that's one thing that I'm trying more and more. Like I just shot, besides Wednesday, I just shot Daryl Dixon, Walking Dead, just not so long ago, and it was a lot of fun because it was bringing into the real Spain, because sometimes Spain plays like Game of Thrones. It's like it's somewhere else, but it was real Spain with zombies, and it was I had a blast with Greg Nicotero, and it was a blast. So every time that I can somehow bring stories to, local is universal. It's always like that. The more intimate, the more local, the more universal it will become. And I hope that happens, hopefully, with the Gypsy Bride through the next year, hopefully.
How do you define success in your career? And what are you hoping to achieve in the next phase of your work?
It's funny because I don't drive. I have a scooter. I mean, when I say scooter, I mean like a real scooter, like one of those like Flintstones, like you actually have to use your leg to kind of like use it. And I remember when I was going to meetings in Los Angeles for the first time, and I folded my scooter in the suitcase, and I went to meetings in Fox and Universal in the scooter, and I showed up like super sweaty. The guy was like, "Yeah, I have a meeting at Fox." And we're like, "Do you?" Yeah, I have a meeting. And I remember having a meeting with the producer. It was like, the guy told me, if you make this movie, you're going to be able to buy a very expensive Porsche or some sort of like expensive car. And to me, it's like, why would I want that? I don't even know how to drive. It doesn't make sense to me. To me, that's not success. It's not, it doesn't mean to have a big car and an expensive house. To me, success is being able to tell a story, to tell the story that you want to tell, and be creative, and the freedom to do whatever you think it's close to your heart. That's, to me, success. And then if you can have a nice house, that's nice. But in the end, that's all I need, honestly.
And in your career, I mean, do you think that in terms of the success, maybe it's not the monetary compensation or the things that brings, but is it saying, okay, well, hey, I'm the first go-to director that they turn to be able to direct a particular project?
The other day I was watching these videos with Denzel Washington, like talking about the ages of man, or for any person, and he said that for the first half of your life, you are about trying to learn and about trying to get it into a position of power, and then you work, and then the last, I'm about to turn 50. So in this last, hopefully 40 or something years of my life, it's about giving to other people and about connecting to other people, and because I'm creating this sort of like bubble of people that I love, like the writer that I work with, the editor that I work with, like Miguel Angel Trudeau, he's directing episodes in this season. He wanted to be a director for a long time. He didn't get the chance. I know he's very talented, and I was like, dude, come and direct with me. We're gonna do it together. So it's about having the opportunity now that I'm in a slightly higher level than I was a few years ago. I can help people out, and if they have a great idea and they have a great concept for us to make a movie together, that to me is success. That's being able to help people. That's the best.
Besides La Nena, Wednesday, anything else on your
I'm very excited.
horizon?
Right after Wednesday, I wrote a movie that I want to direct as my next film. It's called La Línea, because it happens in La Línea de la Concepción, which is a city in the south of Spain, in Cádiz, and it's a city known for having a lot to do with the drug dealing, with the and all of that. But it's a story about a woman, about female characters, about a woman and her daughter and another. It's a three women, three very strong women in that sort of like underworld, and I love the script. It's like mixing Ocean's 11 with The Sixth Sense. It's really it's really original, and I'm in love with that script, and I think it's gonna be hopefully my best film so far.
Well, good luck. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me about this trilogy and your upcoming projects.
Thanks to you for making the questions. Muchas gracias a ti.